Top 10 scary last words or moment from/of prison inmates. Death row inmates are given one last opportunity to say their final words. This opportunity is usually given to them at the absolute last minutes, just before the prisoner is executed. So here are the top 10 scary last words or moment from/of prison inmates. But before going on with our video, hit that subscribe button to watch more videos like this one. Now, let's get going. Number 10, Gary Gilmore. Let's get this creepy ass list started. In at our number 10 with Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore was shot to death by a firing squad in Utah, which made him the first person to be killed in the United States since 1976, when the death penalty was restored. During a robbery, Gary Gilmore shot a man twice in the head, even though he was cooperating with his demands. The next day, he attempted to rob a motel, and he ended up fatally shooting the manager in the head. He confessed to the police that he killed 2 people in cold blood, but he was still only tried for one of those murders because there was not enough physical evidence against him for the other murder. I mean, what even, dude? If someone admits to a crime, isn't that kind of enough? Well, the judge sentenced him to the death penalty, and he had a chance of being executed by hanging or shot by firing squad. Well, I guess he was a pretty big fan of irony because he decided to get shot. Gilmore's last words to his executioners before they shot him through the heart were, "Let's do it," as he stood defiantly in front of the firing squad. Number 9, Erskine Childers. Let me make a guess at what you might be thinking. You might be thinking that everyone on this list must have done something bad, like they must have committed a horrible crime in order to get a death penalty. Well, Erskine Childers might be our one exception to this rule. Erskine Childers was actually an Irish author who wrote a lot of successful novels, but unfortunately, he also had a little bit of a dark side. He would smuggle guns into the country with his sailing yacht until he was caught. A military court found Childers guilty of violating the Emergency Powers Resolution by carrying a small Spanish-made destroyer .32 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Although Childers' lawyer appealed to the Supreme Court, but his appeal could be heard, he was put to death. He shook hands with the firing squad before his execution. He got a promise from his then 16-year-old son, Erskine Hamilton Childers, the future president of Ireland, to track down and shake the hand of any man who had signed his death sentence. "Take a move or two forward, lads. It'll be easier that way," he even said to the firing squad as his final words. In my opinion, I don't blame him for being bitter. I just think he got a harsh punishment for his crime. Number 8, Jimmy Glass. Jimmy Glass is the guy who said, "I'd rather be fishing." Yeah, of course. It's honestly like Jimmy doesn't really care that he is about to die. I also think that he must have come to terms with his sentencing, because those definitely are not inspiring or moving last words. I wonder what he picked to be engraved on his tombstone. But before you start to feel sorry for him, just know what he was executed for. He was a convicted murderer, so well, he had the electrocuting chair coming for him. Number 7, John Avalos Alba. John Avalos Alba was handed down the death penalty for fatally shooting his wife while he was out on bail for a child molestation charge. He was finally executed for lethal injection on May 5th of 2010. I bet the judge who set his bail was feeling really guilty for not setting it any higher. So for his final statement on Earth, he said the most dramatic shit ever. "I wish I could go back and change it, but I know I can't. Thanks for being beside me. I appreciate you always standing by me and everything y'all have done. Tell everyone I love them. I'll be okay. You will too. Just tell everyone I love them. Okay, Warden, do it. I love you all. I can taste it already. I am starting to go." I mean, doesn't that give you chills? I read that you can feel the cold rush of lethal injection piercing through your veins. Probably the worst feeling ever, besides knowing you're getting executed for being a horrible person. Number 6, James French. On our number 6, we have some oddly weird last words. James was a convicted murderer, and he was actually the last person to be executed under Oklahoma's death penalty. He was a pretty violent man. He was already convicted to life in prison for murdering a man who had picked him up from hitchhiking. But he had the desire to die. And so that is when he brutally murdered his cellmate in order to get the death penalty. As soon as he was prepped to be executed by the electric chair, he came up with these infamous last words. How is this for a headline for tomorrow's paper? French fries. Do you guys get it? His last name is French, and he was about to be fried? French fries? Number 5, George Apple. From one scary but clever final statement to another. In at number 5 is George Apple. He said, "Well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple. What is with all these frying puns?" But honestly, I would like to think that if I was given the opportunity for a final statement, I would say something clever like this too, but it is pretty morbid if you think about it. But what was George getting baked for? Well, after killing a police officer in New York City, George Apple was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death on the spot, and his execution was carried out in 1928. And honestly, he had it coming. He also deserved it. Anyways, moving on to out our number 4. Number 4, John Rock. In the year 1980, John kidnapped a 25-year-old nurse in a parking lot where she worked. She was then taken to an empty field, where she was brutally abused and mercilessly murdered by Rock. And as if that was not enough, he ran her body over with his car. How reckless and horrible of a person one can be. After John was sentenced to death, he made several appeals, but they all failed. So, on the day of his execution, his last words were, "Freedom, freedom at last." It has been a good one. Well, I hope you enjoy your freedom now, John Rook, and I am glad you would not be able to hurt anyone ever again. Number 3, Torrey Twain McNabb. Torrey Twain McNabb takes the number 3 spot on today's list. He was executed by lethal injection for killing a police officer back in 1997. His lawyers attempted to make an appeal, stating that the state's execution method was cruel and unusual, but the judge was pretty firm and declined their appeals. So, during his final moments, he said, "To the state of Alabama, I hate you." And as the procedure began, he raised his middle finger to the police officers and died in that position. Yikes. Number 2, Carlos Granados. And now in at number 2 is Carlos Granados. During a heated argument with his girlfriend, he grabbed a large kitchen knife and stabbed her 3-year-old son. Talk about anger management issues. He also managed to stab his girlfriend 30 times, but luckily she survived and was able to testify against him in court. For his final meal, he requested fried chicken, pizza, and a soft drink. And for his final words, he chose to say, "Kathy, you know I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry." Right. Number 1, Petermanuel. And now for Scotland's worst serial killer ever, Petermanuel. He was convicted of murdering a total of 7 people between the years 1956 to 1958, but it is believed that he killed many, many more. He was hanged at Glasgow's Barlinnie prison, and he was one of the last people to have ever been executed in these gallows, ever since the death penalty was overturned. He deserved it. But do you want to know his last words? They were, "Turn up the radio and I will go quietly." Well, there you have it, guys. Top 10 scary last words or moment from/of prison inmates. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting content. Also, hit the bell icon button so that you'll get a notification whenever we post a new video.